I happened to overhear my fiancée in a conversation with her friends, and to my dismay, she remarked that my financial resources were the most impressive aspect of my character. Feeling deeply insulted by her words, I responded by humiliating her in front of her friends. This confrontation escalated to the point where she retaliated by causing significant damage to my home. As a result, I've decided to take legal action against her, ensuring that she won't receive any financial compensation from me. Currently, I'm 29 years old, holding an MBA degree, and enjoying a comfortable and prestigious position within my father's company. Admittedly, this might paint me as an arrogant and privileged individual, but I urge you to listen to my story. During my childhood, our family faced substantial financial struggles and was burdened with serious debt. I was quite young at the time, so my understanding of every intricate detail is limited. However, I do know that my father took out a highly risky loan, using our family home, an inheritance from his grandfather, as collateral. This house was our sole valuable asset, and the loan was instrumental in helping him establish his business. Despite a tumultuous beginning, the business eventually flourished, bringing financial stability to our family. Reflecting on those challenging times, I am genuinely thankful that I wasn't born into wealth and privilege. This lack of a silver spoon upbringing has grounded me, making me more humble and instilling a deep appreciation for hard work. It was this very appreciation that motivated me to pursue an MBA, with the goal of contributing meaningfully to the foundation my father had built. While being the son of a prominent figure in the family business might give the impression that I'm an unremarkable, privileged individual benefiting solely from nepotism, I acknowledge that there is some truth to that. Nevertheless, I firmly believe that my achievements are also a result of my own dedication and hard work, which have contributed to the growth and success of the company. Thanks to these combined efforts, my family and I have achieved a comfortable level of financial security. Personally, this financial stability has made me exceptionally prudent with money, as I am acutely aware that such affluence is not guaranteed forever. This awareness has been a significant blessing, influencing my cautious approach to relationships. I firmly believe that finding someone genuine and not superficial requires substantial effort, especially when you possess considerable wealth. Financial resources can make it challenging to discern who values you for who you are rather than for your bank account. During my mid-20s, when my career was thriving, I went on numerous dates. However, most of these encounters didn't extend beyond the first date. In fact, I can recall only a handful of instances where things progressed to a third date, likely no more than 5 or 6, which I could count on one hand. Approximately 2.5 years ago, I met someone who stood out among the rest. She was exceptionally beautiful, and her radiant smile compelled me to approach her. I learned that her name was Brianna, a pseudonym for obvious reasons, and that she worked as a nurse, a profession I greatly admire. This revelation only heightened my attraction to her. I mustered the courage to ask for her phone number right then and there, marking the beginning of our relationship. In relationships, I have always been very cautious and intentional. When I start dating someone, my goal is to build a long-term connection. I consistently assess whether I can envision a future with someone as a potential spouse before committing seriously. This cautious approach is why I strive to ensure that financial considerations account for no more than a quarter of the reason someone is interested in being with me. It would be foolish to assume that my financial status doesn't make me more appealing to women, but I am determined not to enter into a relationship where someone is primarily interested in my wealth. With Brianna, I genuinely did not observe any behavior indicative of a gold digger. She was intelligent, engaging in meaningful conversations, humorous, and brought everything I desired into our relationship. After 2 years and a few months of dating, I decided to propose to her. She accepted, and we became engaged. Her agreement to spend the rest of her life with me brought immense happiness. However, leading up to the current situation, there was a significant event that caused friction between us, a detail I believe is crucial to share. As our relationship deepened, Brianna became more aware of my family's financial situation. She understood that we were not struggling financially and that our circumstances were quite favorable. A few months after the proposal, I broached the subject of a prenuptial agreement. At the time, it seemed like a sensible and practical discussion to have. Unfortunately, she reacted very negatively to the suggestion. According to her, proposing a prenup was problematic for 2 main reasons. Firstly, it gave the impression that I doubted the longevity of our relationship, which was far from the truth. Even if I was fully committed to the marriage, I couldn't control what might happen if she decided to leave. Secondly, it implied a lack of trust in her to not take advantage of my financial situation if things didn't work out as we hoped. We ended up debating this issue for over an hour, going to bed angry with each other. After spending the entire night contemplating the matter, I decided to abandon the idea of a prenup. Admittedly, this was a poor decision, but my love for her was so strong that I chose to overlook the prenup to prevent it from becoming a wedge between us. Shortly after, our relationship improved significantly. At this juncture, I found myself needing advice from others. One of Brianna's co-workers invited me to a barbecue, and I saw it as an opportunity to meet some of her colleagues. Upon attending, everyone was friendly and welcoming. I had a pleasant time meeting various nurses she worked with and even struck up a conversation with a man outside about sports and stocks while she was inside chatting with her friends. After a while, I needed to use the restroom and went through the back door into a hallway that led to the living room. As I was heading to the bathroom, I overheard Brianna and her friends discussing me. Initially, they were complimenting my attire, noting how well-dressed and expensive my clothes were. The conversation naturally shifted to my wealth, with the women commenting on how fortunate she was to be with someone financially well off. The chatter and giggling continued until Brianna made a particularly hurtful comment: "He has a lot of money, and honestly, his money is the best part of him." This was followed by more laughter, and she mentioned the prenuptial agreement again, explaining why it was necessary for her. At that moment, I felt utterly devastated. I left the party abruptly, no longer needing to use the restroom, and returned home. Brianna noticed that something was wrong, but I chose not to reveal what I had heard until she went to bed. This incident occurred a few days ago, and I find myself at a crossroads, unsure of how to proceed. Brianna is a wonderful person, and I deeply love her, but I'm grappling with whether to overlook what I overheard or to take drastic measures, such as cancelling our wedding plans and asking her to leave my home. My instincts are urging me to end the relationship because I never wanted to be with someone who prioritized my money above all else. Just a few days ago, she seemed like the perfect partner, and it's heartbreaking to see that perception change so rapidly. My emotions are conflicted, my heart tells me to address the issue, but my mind is clouded with uncertainty. I would greatly appreciate any advice or insights on how to handle this situation. Edit 1 ***. Many people have commented that I should have never compromised on the prenuptial agreement and that I should have ended things immediately. While some of the feedback was delivered in a harsh manner, I can handle criticism. If given another opportunity, I might reconsider my approach, but I agree that I would advise others similarly. Some commenters suggest that I should have maintained my stance on the prenup from the beginning. Even if I choose to stay with Brianna, overhearing her comments has underscored the importance of having a prenuptial agreement in place. Edit 2 ***. I'm leaning towards agreeing with those who recommend ending the relationship now rather than risking being with someone who has demonstrated that my wealth is a primary motivator for her. However, I believe that discussing the prenuptial agreement again might still be the best course of action. This step would protect me even if it doesn't necessarily change her underlying motivations. Isn't it natural for someone to value a partner who is financially stable? Edit 3 ***. Despite receiving much advice, I plan to have the prenuptial discussion once more to see how she responds. However, I am prepared to end the relationship if necessary. I love Brianna deeply, making it much harder for me to let her go. I want to ensure that I've given our relationship every possible chance. Update ***. For those who have been following my story, here's the latest development. After overhearing Brianna's comments about my money being the best part of me, things have concluded, and I'm satisfied with how events unfolded. The first step I took was to address the prenup issue again with Brianna about a week after the barbecue incident. I invited her to sit down and discuss the matter, reiterating the importance of a prenup. Unfortunately, her reaction was even more intense the second time. She reiterated that the prenup signified a lack of trust and commitment to our relationship. I attempted to explain that it was more about safeguarding my father's hard work, as I own a significant portion of his company, rather than doubting our future together. However, she remained adamant and emotional. I questioned whether she would still marry me if the prenup was non-negotiable, and she indicated that she would seriously reconsider our future together. It became clear that my efforts to explain were futile. I reminded her that I had initially let the prenup go to preserve our relationship and asked her to guess why I was bringing it up again. Unsure of my intentions, she was puzzled, so I guided her to recall the conversation she had with her nurse colleagues at the barbecue. Initially, she denied remembering anything specific, but upon prompting, she began to tremble and display visible anxiety. Despite my attempts to encourage her to speak, she remained silent, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Her distress caused me to laugh, which in turn made her break down further, crying and sobbing without explaining her earlier comments. Frustrated by her lack of response, I informed her that our wedding was off, leading her to collapse and repeatedly mutter pleas through her tears. I then locked myself in our room and went to bed. The following morning, Brianna approached me looking visibly exhausted and sleep-deprived. She attempted to be affectionate and started explaining the context of the overheard conversation, claiming she was merely trying to fit into a gossip girl type of social scene and that she didn't mean any of the hurtful things I heard. She blamed her friends and colleagues for being negative influences and insisted that money was never the reason she fell in love with me. While I initially wanted to believe her, her subsequent behavior suggested otherwise. She mentioned that she would sign the prenup without issue, but I had nothing further to say. I gently took her hand, looked into her eyes with tenderness, and slowly removed the engagement ring from her finger. I couldn't bear the thought of that ring ending up with someone who valued my wealth over our relationship. Her initial tears quickly turned into a barrage of insults, calling me ugly and charming, mocking my masculinity, and accusing me of being gay. She even claimed to have been intimate with a man she met at a bar, though I'm unsure of the truth of that statement. Regardless, her relentless insults culminated in her declaring that my money was the only good thing about me and expressing regret that she couldn't exploit my wealth more effectively. Her tirade continued until she began throwing objects at me. Despite my efforts to remain calm and indifferent, her aggressive behavior forced me to retreat to another room, locking myself in for what felt like 2 hours until she finally left, having destroyed the entire house in her anger. Furious and certain that ending the relationship was the right decision, I documented the damage by taking photos and retrieving footage from our indoor security cameras. I then left the house to stay in a hotel, as the chaos at home was overwhelming. Seeking some form of retribution, I visited her social media profiles, locating the posts where she had announced our engagement. I composed a message stating, "I regret to inform you that the wedding is cancelled, and I am no longer engaged to Brianna." She admitted that she was only with me for my money, and when I confronted her about it, she lost control and destroyed my home. If you have any questions, ask her, and posted this as a reply to every comment on her engagement announcements. Since she dislikes negative perceptions among others, this public declaration felt satisfying. Additionally, I shared my own post showcasing the destruction she caused, including short video clips of her throwing items during her tantrum. I tagged her family, friends, and even her workplace at the hospital, partly for amusement and partly to stir up some gossip about her among her colleagues. Her parents attempted to contact me multiple times, but I chose not to respond, despite their kindness. When she finally called, her voice was a mix of crying and threats to harm me for ruining her life. I dismissed her as being overly dramatic, considering the extent of the chaos she had already caused. She shouted about how I had humiliated her with the videos I posted, leading others to mockingly refer to her as Brianna of Tarth behind her back. I found her distressing reaction somewhat amusing, though I was mildly concerned that her behavior might escalate. Fortunately, nothing further happened, at least not yet. I promptly contacted the event planner to cancel all wedding-related arrangements, a decision that was emotionally painful but necessary. Once that was done, I knew our relationship was definitively over. The most satisfying outcome for me is that I am taking legal action to seek compensation for the damages she caused to my property. I initially approached her politely, but she resorted to calling me unpleasant names, so I don't mind adding more stress by involving lawyers. She will now have to bear the costs of legal representation, potential time off work, and ultimately, compensate me for the extensive destruction she inflicted. As of now, the case is pending, but I have a recording of her being completely unruly and have consulted with my lawyer. I am confident that she won't evade the consequences. Despite the lingering hurt from a relationship I once hoped would succeed, I am relieved to have discovered her true feelings sooner rather than later. I would rather endure the current pain than face deeper anguish in the future. A heartfelt thank you to everyone who has supported me, especially in response to my previous post. I am reading all your comments, so please continue to share your thoughts on how I handled the situation and sought justice. Brief update for those eagerly awaiting news on my fiancée, whom I caught discussing my money as her favorite trait to her friends. The situation has been resolved to my satisfaction. The first step involved addressing the prenuptial agreement once more. About a week after the barbecue incident, I sat down with Brianna to revisit the prenup discussion. Her reaction was even more intense than before. She reiterated that the prenup signified distrust and a lack of belief in our relationship's future. I tried to explain that it was more about protecting my father's legacy and the significant stake I hold in his company, rather than doubting our commitment. However, her anger and frustration only intensified. I asked her directly if she would marry me if the prenup was non-negotiable, and she promptly indicated that she would seriously reconsider our relationship. Realizing that my explanations were falling on deaf ears, I reminded her that I had previously waived the prenup to save our relationship and asked her to guess why I was bringing it up again. She was confused, so I prompted her to recall the conversation she had with her nurse colleagues at the barbecue, where she had made those hurtful comments about my money. Initially, she claimed to have no recollection, but as I pressed further, her anxiety became palpable, her hands trembled, and she became visibly distressed. Her inability to articulate an explanation led me to expose the truth: our wedding was cancelled. At that moment, she collapsed, crying and pleading repeatedly. I locked myself in our room and went to bed, leaving her to process the news. The next morning, Brianna appeared at my doorstep looking disheveled and sleep-deprived. She attempted to reconcile, attributing her earlier comments to a misguided attempt to fit in with a certain social group, and denied that money was a factor in her feelings for me. While I wanted to believe her initially, her behavior suggested otherwise. She assured me that signing the prenup would not be an issue, but I was already beyond saying anything further. Taking her hand tenderly, I removed the engagement ring, signifying the end of our engagement. Her initial tears quickly turned into a barrage of insults, calling me ugly and charming, mocking my masculinity, and making derogatory remarks about my sexual orientation. She even claimed to have been with another man, although I remain uncertain about the truth of that statement. Her relentless verbal attacks culminated in her declaring that my wealth was the only good thing about me and expressing regret that she couldn't exploit it further. Her outburst escalated to the point where she began throwing objects at me, forcing me to retreat to another room and lock myself in until the situation calmed down. Upon emerging, I discovered that she had destroyed my entire home. Enraged, I documented the damage and left to stay in a hotel, overwhelmed by the destruction. Seeking retribution, I publicly announced the end of our engagement on her social media profiles, highlighting her motives and the chaos she caused. I shared images and videos of the damage, tagging her acquaintances and even her workplace to spread the word about her behavior. Her parents reached out multiple times, but I chose not to engage, despite their previous kindness. When she finally called, her voice was a mix of tears and threats, but I dismissed her as being overly dramatic. She continued to shout about how I had humiliated her, leading others to mockingly nickname her Brianna of Tarth. While I found some amusement in her reactions, I remained concerned about the possibility of further escalation. Thankfully, nothing more happened immediately after. I promptly cancelled all wedding arrangements, a decision that was emotionally taxing but necessary to protect myself. With the relationship definitively over, I am now focused on taking legal action to seek compensation for the extensive damage she caused to my property. Despite the residual pain from a relationship I once cherished, I am relieved to have uncovered her true intentions sooner rather than later. I would rather endure the current hurt than face deeper emotional turmoil in the future. A sincere thank you to everyone who has supported me, especially in response to my earlier post. I am reading all your comments, so please continue to share your thoughts on how I handled the situation and sought justice. Brief update for those who have been following the story of my fiancée, Brianna, who I discovered was discussing my wealth as her favorite trait, I have some closure to share. After confronting her about the prenuptial agreement once more, she reacted even more intensely than before, reiterating that the prenup indicated a lack of trust and commitment. I attempted to explain that it was about protecting my father's legacy and my substantial stake in his company, not about doubting our relationship. Her frustration and anger only grew, and she made it clear that she would reconsider our future together if the prenup was non-negotiable. Realizing that my explanations were ineffective, I reminded her that I had previously waived the prenup to save our relationship and encouraged her to recall the conversation she had with her nurse colleagues, where she had made those hurtful comments about my money. Initially, she denied remembering, but her anxiety became evident as she began to tremble and exhibit signs of extreme distress. Unable to provide a satisfactory explanation, I informed her that our wedding was cancelled. She collapsed, crying and pleading, leading me to lock myself in our room for the night. The next morning, Brianna appeared looking exhausted and sleep-deprived. She attempted to reconcile, claiming that her earlier comments were an attempt to fit into a particular social group, and denied that money was a factor in her feelings for me. While I wanted to believe her, her subsequent behavior suggested otherwise. She assured me that signing the prenup would not be an issue, but I had already made up my mind. Taking her hand tenderly, I removed the engagement ring, symbolizing the end of our relationship. Her initial tears quickly turned into a barrage of insults, calling me ugly and charming, mocking my masculinity, and making derogatory remarks about my sexual orientation. She even claimed to have been with another man, although I remain uncertain about the truth of that statement. Her relentless verbal attacks culminated in her declaring that my wealth was the only good thing about me and expressing regret that she couldn't exploit it further. Her outburst escalated to the point where she began throwing objects at me, forcing me to retreat to another room and lock myself in until the situation calmed down. Upon emerging, I discovered that she had destroyed my entire home. Enraged, I documented the damage and left to stay in a hotel, overwhelmed by the destruction. Seeking retribution, I publicly announced the end of our engagement on her social media profiles, highlighting her motives and the chaos she caused. I shared images and videos of the damage, tagging her acquaintances and even her workplace to spread the word about her behavior. Her parents reached out multiple times, but I chose not to engage, despite their previous kindness. When she finally called, her voice was a mix of tears and threats, but I dismissed her as being overly dramatic. She continued to shout about how I had humiliated her, leading others to mockingly nickname her Brianna of Tarth. While I found some amusement in her reactions, I remained concerned about the possibility of further escalation. Thankfully, nothing more happened immediately after. I promptly cancelled all wedding arrangements, a decision that was emotionally taxing but necessary to protect myself. With the relationship definitively over, I am now focused on taking legal action to seek compensation for the extensive damage she caused to my property. Despite the residual pain from a relationship I once cherished, I am relieved to have uncovered her true intentions sooner rather than later. I would rather endure the current hurt than face deeper emotional turmoil in the future. A sincere thank you to everyone who has supported me, especially in response to my earlier post. I am reading all your comments, so please continue to share your thoughts on how I handled the situation and sought justice. Brief update I'm pleased to share that I was awarded $987 for the damages Brianna caused to my apartment, which included hotel fees due to my inability to stay there and professional cleaning fees because the place was in disarray. The satisfaction on my face was immense, as I was finally receiving compensation after our split. It seems fitting that she should have been the one with a prenuptial agreement in the end. Story 2 I overheard my wife talking on the phone with her ex and later discovered that she was involved in a threesome with him and his current girlfriend. In response, I exposed everything during our family dinner. I had been married to my wife for just a year when I discovered her affair. Before Sarah and I married, we were family friends, our families had a long-standing relationship, and her mother was a very close friend of my own mother. Despite our family's connection, Sarah had been married to her previous husband, and our romantic feelings for each other had been unreciprocated for years. During our teenage years, I had harbored feelings for Sarah, but after she married her first husband, those feelings waned, and I moved on. Unfortunately, 2 years into her marriage, Sarah divorced her husband due to his infidelity, which is when our friendship blossomed into love. Throughout her divorce, I stood by her, offering support and companionship, and eventually, we fell in love. I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she expressed that I was nothing like her ex-husband, wishing she had met me before marrying him. I loved Sarah deeply, and shortly after her divorce was finalized, I invited her to move in with me. Given that I had known her for years and wanted to build a life together, she agreed. We began living together, and after 9 months of waking up beside each other every day, I believed it was time to take our relationship to the next level. We held a small wedding, inviting friends and family, and everything seemed perfect. Marrying Sarah felt like a dream come true, and I showered her with love and affection. She reciprocated by caring for me, maintaining our home, and handling all the necessary chores. I cherished coming home to her after work. After our marriage, we continued with our bi-monthly family gatherings, where our parents and available siblings would come together at either my parents' or her parents' house. We would enjoy meals together, creating a sense of extended family and community. Our married life was harmonious, with minimal issues. However, there was one recurring problem: I sometimes forgot to take out the trash. After Sarah's divorce, she had assured me that she was no longer in contact with her ex-husband, especially since their relationship had ended on bad terms. I believed her, having witnessed the pain she endured and understanding how difficult it was for her to leave someone she had been with for 4 years and married to for 3 years. This was why I did everything in my power to comfort and support her during that challenging period. We never considered having children, as Sarah did not want them. She preferred that we adopt a pet, such as a dog or a bird, when she felt ready to become a parent. I was comfortable with this arrangement, as I wasn't fond of children myself and agreed with the idea of having a pet in the future. Even our parents attempted to persuade us by sharing the joys and importance of having children, but we remained firm in our decision. Looking back, I'm grateful that I didn't succumb to their persuasion, as I would have ended up raising another man's child. One evening, Sarah and I were in the living room watching a movie together on a Friday night, as we often did. Suddenly, I realized I couldn't find my phone. It wasn't missing. I had a habit of dropping it and forgetting where I placed it. I searched the couch and the entire living room but came up empty-handed. Frustrated, I asked Sarah for her phone so I could call mine and listen for the vibration. She handed it to me, which was a significant distraction from the movie we were both anticipating. She was so engrossed in her conversation with friends that she didn't notice when I left the room. I proceeded to search the kitchen, laundry room, having done laundry just before, bedroom, and eventually found my phone in the bathroom. Relieved to have found it, especially since I had a work meeting in less than 10 minutes, I was about to return to the bedroom when a WhatsApp group chat notification appeared on Sarah's screen. The group chat had an unusual name and several suggestive emojis, piquing my curiosity. I opened the group chat to read the messages and quickly realized that Sarah was having an affair behind my back with her ex-husband and his current girlfriend. The messages were filled with derogatory remarks and plans for intimate encounters, including references to a threesome they had engaged in that week and future arrangements involving various toys to enhance their experiences. Stunned, I stood there in disbelief for almost a minute, struggling to comprehend what I had just discovered. It was shocking to realize that we had both spoken about her ex-husband on the same day. She had cursed him and wished him all the worst. To ensure I wasn't misinterpreting the situation, I meticulously reviewed the messages multiple times, taking screenshots of incriminating conversations and the photos of her ex-husband and his girlfriend. I saved these screenshots on my phone and then marked Sarah's messages as unread, erasing any traces to prevent her from denying the affair. Confronting her immediately seemed impossible, as it was overwhelming to process that evening, and I couldn't bring myself to sleep due to the distressing revelation. The following morning, Sarah noticed that I was distant and cold towards her, but she assumed I would lighten up once we met our families. We had a family gathering at her parents' house on the second Saturday of the month. When we arrived, I made a conscious effort not to disrupt the happy atmosphere and waited until lunchtime to address the issue. During the meal, I casually asked Sarah if she had seen her ex-husband recently. Her surprised reaction raised red flags. She responded with a smile, denying any contact since their divorce. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably, and her parents observed my growing agitation. Unable to contain my anger any longer, I erupted, demanding an explanation for the screenshots I had seen on her phone. As she reached for my phone and read the messages, her expression changed dramatically, and she immediately began to cry. Simultaneously, I sent all the screenshots to our joint family group chat, leaving everyone shocked by the revelation. My parents were visibly disappointed and ashamed, urging her to explain her actions, but she could only weep uncontrollably. After exposing her infidelity in front of both our families, I left the house, and she attempted to follow me. Choosing not to engage further, I abandoned her there and returned home. That evening, I packed all of her belongings and drove them to her parents' house before leaving. The following week, she arrived at my home, begging for forgiveness and creating a small scene as I got into my car and drove away, which I ignored. Eventually, we divorced, and she has been miserable since then. Her infidelity also strained the relationship between our families, causing my mother to distance herself from her mother, despite their previous closeness. Now, for years later, I'm grateful that her betrayal didn't prevent me from moving forward. I'm currently in a relationship with someone I intend to marry, though we are taking things slowly to ensure a solid foundation. As for Sarah, she discovered that her ex-husband was merely using her for physical pleasure. He didn't marry his girlfriend and eventually dumped both of them, leading her to remain single since then.